Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Andrew Yang and the Ohio CNN New York Times Debate 4 and the questions that were asked within that debate. All right. So actually, it was it was incredible to debate for Andrew Yang. It is unarguably his finest performance in any debate yet, right? And a lot of that was his execution, but also a lot of that was just the rest of the world doing what they should have done from the start and acknowledging him and his ideas and treating him like an equal, like an actual candidate, right? Just giving him the respect he was always due, right? And part of that is CNN, right? Now, I'm going to say, so I know the debate was CNN and the New York Times. I'm just going to talk about the CNN. And the reason why is, so I do know, so the New York Times is in there as well, but it's difficult for me kind of to take them seriously because I don't really understand what they are. Like, they're a newspaper, and, are they a newspaper? I don't know. I guess everything I'm about to say about CNN, New York Times owns a portion of it, right? So let me acknowledge that right out of the gate. But I'm going to say CNN. And just acknowledge that everything I have to say about CNN, New York Times owns a portion of it because they were responsible for the debate as well. They had some measure in it, a hand in it, right? All right, so let's talk about this. So one of the things that was really great is the questions were the best questions we've seen yet, by far, okay? Now, that's a really interesting statement because today on Twitter, I saw many people saying, hey, what the heck? Where were the questions about climate change? Hey, what the heck? Where were the questions about immigration? Right? And sure enough, they were 100% right. There were no questions about climate change, and there were no questions about immigration. I am 100% cool with that, right? And the reason why is not because those aren't important, not because those are not important issues. I'm 100% okay with that because we need to stop pretending that every debate is the only debate, right? Like, there are multiple debates, and we have heard a lot about climate change and a lot about immigration in every single debate to this point, right? So we threw away the climate change questions. We threw away the immigration questions. And what did we get? What did we get in place? Well, a lot better questions, right? Kurds. That's an incredibly complex subject that is happening right now, right? It absolutely showed us, it was a great question to show us what these candidates actually think for international policy. It was fantastic. It was a great question. The impeachment question, that's a now question, right? Like, that's a now question, right? And it was great questions like, is it a distraction, right? That's a really good question. Like, it clearly seems like it is. And I'm glad at least CNN's acknowledging that and saying, hey, even if we all feel great about this and it's comfortable, isn't this going to just put Donald Trump's name even more in the, so it was really nice. It was a fantastic question, and it was very relevant to the moment, right? What else we got? We got a UBI question, universal basic income, at the beginning of the debate. This was stellar for Andrew Yang. Absolutely stellar for Andrew Yang. It was, no questions about China for Andrew Yang. Just a great question, right to his main issue. It put, universal basic income, it put the freedom dividend right at center stage at the beginning of the debate. It announced this guy has a plan that's fundamentally different than everybody on the stage. Let's talk about it. Throw your political daggers at the idea. Let's do it. Let's get into it. And they did, right? And it was just wonderful, right? The federal jobs guarantee, right? We got to put that right. We got to put Bernie Sanders' idea right up against UBI, right? It was fantastic, right? It was so great for Andrew Yang. And really it was due, right? Because in the first few debates, he was really ignored. He was literally pushed off to the side. He was given the least amount of time. There were other newspapers that were, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, like, did a piece where they said random man runs for president. Just these outrageous, dismissals of somebody who's just coming from the people, right? Now, not saying, oh, hey, where's your law? Actually he has a law degree. Like, so, yeah, a dude with two Ivy League degrees, and they're just calling him So it was really nice to just see, and that's what we saw, was Andrew Yang was simply treated like a regular candidate, right? Like he should have been treated from debate one, right? But I'm one of the people who is a Yang supporter who has been vocal when the Yang media blackout was in effect. But frankly, the Yang media blackout was not in effect last night. I do think that the getting rid of the opening questions was specifically targeted to stop Andrew Yang from having another mic drop on the opening statement. But the reality is they didn't silence him. They didn't cut his mic. He was given a chance to talk about his ideas, to defend his ideas, to champion his ideas, and he was given due respect, right? Maybe they could have given it would have been nice if the opening statements was there, but it was okay. I have no complaints overall. So we got all these great questions. So let's whip through them. We got Kurds, impeachment. We got the federal jobs guarantee, candidate health. They talked about candidate health, right? This was fantastic for Andrew Yang. This is, a question on candidate health is amazing for Andrew Yang, for Pete Buttigieg, for Tulsi Gabbard, right? They have the actual frame, right, that is required. Like, they have the vibrancy, the resiliency that is clearly needed to go through what is one of the most physically grueling, mentally grueling, emotionally grueling gauntlets that exists within humanity, right? Like, and so youth we are getting to a point where pretending that youth is not a resource for the president is absurd, right? It absolutely is, right? And I mean, I think we had a very, very clear reminder of this very recently, right? Like, you don't take, I own 2 cars, right? I had to drive my daughter back to college. We had a Columbus Day break. My daughter came home from college, right? I had to decide, okay, I have 2 cars in the driveway. I have a car with 80,000 miles on it, and I have a car with 170,000 miles on it. It was going to be a long, arduous trip, right? I knew there was going to be construction on the road. I knew there was going to be bumps in the road. I don't have to tell you which car I took, right? I want to get there. I want myself to be safe. I want my daughter to be safe. I don't even have to tell you which car I took. You know which car I took, right? And that's the issue, right? There comes a point where logic simply locks into place, right? And I think the whole country, we're being asked, does logic matter anymore? Clearly it does, right? The Democrat Party is being asked this, right? We as Democrat voters are being asked this. Does logic still matter? Yes, logic still matters, right? So we had these amazing questions. So first and foremost, I want to give a big hearty thank you to CNN. Thank you for acknowledging Andrew Yang, for giving him the due respect. We appreciate it, right? Like you could have chose to give him a raw deal the way you had done in the past few debates, or not giving him all the due respect. But that didn't happen this time, and I am incredibly thankful. Thank you, CNN. Thank you, New York Times, for giving Andrew Yang the opportunity to speak and for giving him due respect. I'm very, very thankful for that, right? And so I want to put that in place, because I think it's important when we're calling out Yang media blackout, we need to be equally vocal when our candidate is given a chance, right? Now, here's an interesting question. Why did CNN do it? Why did they stop trying to shove Andrew Yang to the back, and put him forward, right? It's a good question, right? I don't think for a second that it was altruism or the goodness of their heart, right? I think there's a couple reasons for it. One, CNN is a news agency at scale, right? They are part of history. They are a global news outlet, right? And they're filled with real editors, real reporters, real anchors, the whole nine, right? Real news personalities, real news people, right? And I think we live in America, and America has a 2-century-old tradition of objectivity in news, right? And I think that there comes a point where, like, yeah, you can do a lot of shenanigans. I think a lot of people go to work and get away with a lot of shenanigans, right? And that's what we were seeing with CNN. They were just, like, really enjoying themselves, playing to their own biases, propping up the So I think the link for why CNN is the way it is, come on, like, basically people who create news write, and they go to journalism, and you get there by going to Ivy League schools, right? Or incredibly prestigious schools, right? And right now, people who go to prestigious schools, that's the coastal elite. The coastal elite align very, very closely with blue thought patterns, not red, right? So it's just, again, it's logic for why CNN has the biases they have. And since they have a pretty lockstep blue thought pattern, right, it makes sense why they would be backing who they believe will defeat Trump, which is, I think, something clearly that CNN would like to see, right? But I think we got here because they had pulled so many shenanigans in debate 1, 2, in the debates they were connected to, and during the time period of debate 1, 2, and 3, I know they didn't host all those, right? That people were starting to say this is getting outrageous, and and CNN was starting to become part of the story, and they're like, hey, remember that tradition of objectivity in news? Why don't we give that a shot? And I was, I was thrilled to see it. It was really, really nice, right? So I think there is that reason that the CNN was acknowledging and saying, hey, why don't we try some objectivity in journalism? It could be a lark. It could be fun. Yeah, So that's, I think, one of the reasons why we got that last night. Here's the next one. Here's the next one. Here's the next one. Last night, actually, yeah, on Thursday night, right? Or wait, I'm sorry, Tuesday night. Sorry. All right. On the debate night, we saw Bernie Sanders standing there debating every other candidate, right? This was a bold move, right? If I get a cold, I will call in sick, right? Like, so Bernie, he was risking a lot to be there, right? And I think one of the reasons why Bernie is taking the risks that we're seeing him take right now, saying absolutely nothing will stop me from driving toward becoming the president of the United States of America. Nothing, no risk is too high, not for me or the nation, right? Is I think he really, no pun intended here, he really feels burned by what happened in 2016, right? And I think all of us looking back now, it's pretty clear that DNC just did not do right by Bernie. I mean, that just seems so shockingly clear. And the DNC had 4 years of, in my opinion, of pretty bad reputational loss between 2016 and 2020 from Democrat voters and from Democrat voters, right? And people who have blue thought patterns. They caught a lot of flack. There was I really think the DNC got major reputational loss because of what they done to Bernie. And now, and also recently, Facebook has had serious reputational loss based on the idea that their thumb was on the scale, in one direction or another in the last election, right? And they've had to deal with that. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg went before the House and the Senate. Like, it was, it's a thing, right? And I think that's another reason why CNN's like, oh my gosh, we're trending on Twitter. There are, people are saying we're part of this, Yang Media blackout. Maybe we need to report the news rather than be the news, right? And so I think a lot of people at CNN looked at the reputational loss that the DNC took for having appeared to have their thumb on the scale, right, for Hillary in 2016, and that Facebook suffered from even having appeared, right, to have had their thumb on the scale in one direction or another for in the 2016-11 election. And I think CNN's just like, let's try some objectivity in journalism, and let's try to report the news rather than be the news, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons why we saw what we saw last night. that does not revoke my thank you. I really am. I'm very incredibly appreciative of CNN for giving good questions that very much served Andrew Yang, but in my opinion also served all of the candidates other than Biden, Warren, and Sanders, right? I really, all the establishment candidates, right? And it's funny. It's really funny to think of Bernie as an establishment candidate, but it really does seem like he really is an establishment. I mean, boy, all the regular establishment people. Yeah. I really think he's become an establishment candidate, which is really wild. Like, boy, you got an interesting pack when Bernie Sanders is considered an establishment candidate. Wow, right? But Bernie's up there center stage, right? And I really think we had fantastic questions. They allowed Andrew Yang to shine. I am 100% thankful to CNN, and I have given you my reasons why I think CNN did the right thing and gave decent questions in this debate, where in previous debates and in the time period of previous debates, the coverage and the questions were not that great, right? That's what I think. I'd love to hear what you think is the reason. Why did CNN fix the question problem now, right? I'm really curious what you think. Please let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.